and welcome to today's lecture. Today we'll be focusing on pre-flight. Pre-flight is the final check before it's too late. What is pre-flight? Think of an airplane. Would a pilot take off before checking to make sure everything was in tip-top shape before the flight? I sure hope so. In printing, pre-flight is the process of confirming that the digital files required for the printing process are all present, valid, error-free, and ready for printing. This process is for efficiency, to ensure there is the smallest amount of waste possible during production. So essentially, pre-flighting is the last stop for all the mistakes to be checked, to go through, to make sure that you only have to do the job once and it doesn't look bad for the customer. Take note, this will be one of the most important lectures of print production. Pre-flighting is not only important for printers, future graphic designers, photographers, screen artists, or anyone else who may need to send a file to print. The troubleshooting theme will carry on through the entire year. So like anything, whether it's a test, an assignment, what's the one thing that everyone always says? Double check your work. Pre-flighting is the opportunity to double check that everything's been carried out. Sometimes you can have multiple people touching a file, multiple different hands means there's potential for more errors. So pre-flight is when you get a chance to go back carefully with your checklist and make sure that all of your files and everything are perfect for production. Printing timeline. Files are submitted by a customer or a graphic designer, depending on how it is. They then go to pre-press and pre-flight. So sometimes files will be supplied by a customer that they maybe did in Paint or PowerPoint or who knows, not in Adobe software. Well, it's your job as a pre-press operator to adjust that. We can't print necessarily from a PowerPoint, depending on what the product is. So pre-press would take the time to ensure that the file is perfect for your specific print shop. So depending on the requirements, are you going to have embellishments? Are there any extra steps to make sure the folds line up? All of those pieces are important to make sure that you get the perfect final product. Then you have the printing stage, followed by finish and bindery. So this would be, if you're making a booklet, would create the book, bind the book. If you're sending a mail out, making sure it's all folded and in the envelopes. So all those pieces come together in the end, and then the product goes out for a delivery. So delivered the finished product to your customer. Pre-press. Pre-press refers to everything that happens to make sure a job is correctly prepared for printing. This is when you catch the errors that could hold the job up on the press. For trouble-free printing in production, it is important to get your design in the best shape possible before releasing the job into production. Pre-flighting a file is the responsibility of the pre-press operator. This can be somebody with our knowledge or more technical versed graphic designer. So there's lots of options. This sounds terrible, but just because you're a graphic designer doesn't necessarily mean you know how to make press-ready files. Working on labels, sometimes we have world-renowned graphic designers sending us beautiful designs, and they aren't technically sound for printing. So this means our pre-press operator must go in and create these files and kind of clean them up, clean the background up to make sure it looks the same on the finished product, but ensure that it prints correctly with whatever your specific technology is in that print shop to make sure it works flawlessly. Pre-flight watches for images, fonts, colors, spot colors, document size, bleed, and margins. All of these are incredibly important. Images. Images are probably the most persistent problem in pre-flighting customer files. File type, format, color mode, and resolution can all cause a problem. PSDs, ESP, and TIFF are your best file formats for images. That should be EPS, not ESP. The color mode must always be CMYK, and the resolution should be between 150 to 300 dots per inch or pixels per inch. Images. Be cautious of cell phone images or images downloaded from the internet. They often only have a resolution of 72 pixels per inch, much lower than what printers require. Resolution is the hardest issue to fix while pre-flighting. This can often require a customer to pick a new image, making for a confused and unhappy customer. So even if a customer has worked with a third-party graphic designer or they've done it themselves, when they submit the files to you, in their opinion, they're submitting the most perfect file. It's print ready. We print it off like you would your home printer, and the product is complete. However, sometimes if it's 72 pixels per inch, that means that sometimes you need to adjust the size. They give you a 4x6 when they want an 8.5 by 11. Well, if you stretch that 72 pixels per inch, as we discussed in our resolution lecture, that means the resolution will decrease from 72 if we make it larger. So sometimes if somebody's taken a picture with their cell phone, and cell phones have improved, so it's a little bit better, but if they've taken a picture with their cell phone and it's a picture of their dog that they want and they're making dog treats, well, I can't ask them for a better quality picture, and I can't exactly put a different dog on the image if it's that customer's personal dog. So these are some of the hurdles, speed bumps you have to go through. So sometimes pre-press can be as much a customer service job as it is a technical graphics job. Fonts. Fonts may also be a recurring problem. However, there's a simple solution. If your customer supplies a properly packaged and designed file, fonts or images shouldn't be a problem at all. However, this is often not the case. A workaround for fonts is changing them all to outlines. This changes the font into a vector image, decreasing the file size and removing font errors. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you can Google a font name and download it yourself off the internet. Not an ideal practice, but it can save the day for the customer. So this is something that in the last 7 years of working in the print industry, I can tell you I've come across every single day. Almost every file you get, somebody can be an expert in InDesign, an expert in Illustrator, and fonts will always be an issue. Packaging makes it simple. That's why we drill it. That's why we keep doing it in every single assignment that we do. Because no matter if you're looking to go into photography, graphic design, screen arts, the music industry, something along those lines, we'll use these Adobe softwares. And once you learn them, there's so many powerful tools, it's even hard to go back to Microsoft Word or anything else once you kind of get the basics and you feel comfortable with this software. But all you need to do is file, package, and then compress that folder and send it to your customer or send it to your printer, whichever way it goes, because then everything is there. The working images are there, the working fonts are there, the working file is there. That is ideal situation. And I can count on one hand how many times as a printer I've received a package folder. We often get an InDesign file or an Illustrator file, but not packaged. And what this means is if I open it up and see there's if you think of beer labels or wine labels, there's often really fancy fonts involved. Those are missing. The more money that a design firm may have, the more likely they are to purchase font families, which can go upwards of $300, $500 plus for a font family. So that's one font with various thicknesses, various styles. And me as a printer, if I bought those fonts for everybody, it can get quite costly. So if you send the package folder, the font's there. Not the whole font family, just the ones you need. So, yeah, otherwise, if you create an outline of that image, well, then I have it. The difference between outlines is once you change it to outlines, you can't change it back. So if you notice that there's a typo, you can't easily fix it from the outline perspective. It's not just a matter of going up and changing a couple letters. You have to retype or refind or send it back to the designer or customer to fix it themselves. The other option, which is honestly the more popular way of how we would fix this, is find the font or a close font online for free download. There's millions of fonts that are for free. However, sometimes you don't get all of the characters. Sometimes that downloaded font is missing numbers. That can be a problem. Sometimes it's missing punctuation. That can be a problem. Sometimes you get the absolute perfect font and everything's simple and ready to go. Sometimes you download a font and what might have the same exact name, but what you get doesn't match what the customer provided. So fonts, I could go on about them all day. Love them. They make everything look good. They're very much needed, but they can be a pain. Colors. Which colors do printers use the most? Often to print. This should be drilled into your head. CMYK/process color. Process color is the technical term for CMYK, which represents the colors cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. It is the prepress operator's job to ensure all images and color elements are converted to CMYK before releasing the job into production. However, once again, there are some exceptions. Spot colors, commonly known as Pantone colors, can change the responsibility of the prepress operator. The printers would need to ensure that the spot inks have been ordered and that there are swatch books nearby to ensure that the color target is met. So if you notice in this image on the right hand side, if I look at the middle blue swatch right in the middle, there's a Pantone 7459C. So we know the C means that it's coded, and we know that the 7459 is the number that we can type into InDesign to make sure that we have color accuracy. But if you look to the right, you see there's the cyan, magenta, yellow, and the black is hidden, and there's values underneath. So 72 blue cyan, 9 magenta, 0 yellow, and who knows what the black is. If you notice, the swatches above are ever so slightly different colors. So these Pantone books are useful tools to help save cost and to kind of help have an overall visual. So the Pantone swatch 7459 on the left, that is the actual spot color that you would need to buy that specific ink. However, on the right, with the cyan, magenta, yellow, and black underneath, that is the closest representation of the Pantone color 7459 created with CMYK. So this is a very expensive Pantone book, but sometimes they're pretty spot on, sometimes you can't tell the difference. However, it can be the difference of a 5-color unit or a 4-color unit. So remember, anything outside of those 4 colors costs extra. You buy an extra plate, sometimes you need a bigger press, sometimes the paper has to go through the press more. All kinds of variables that make choosing a spot color more expensive. However, if you're Coca-Cola and money's not a problem, it's more important that your branding stays consistent. So these are always things that a customer will have to weigh out, and it's your job as a printer to give them their options. Document size. As silly as it sounds, it is not uncommon for customers to submit graphics with the wrong document size. When a customer comes in with a new job, it is important to record all of their required finishing specs. Pre-flighting includes the document specs match, the proper bleed and margins are adhered to for production. So sometimes a customer might supply you a package InDesign file, but they've never heard of bleed. It's not uncommon for design, or if somebody's a designer in-house of like Nova Scotia Power, not always so important. For printing, it can be very important, as we've discussed. Margins are the same way. Sometimes people don't recognize that if it's not a basic sheet of paper, that you don't have to adhere to margins. So these are all things that it is the job of the pre-press operator to make sure it all matches. Lastly, at the end of the day, pre-flighting can be one of the most vital pieces to print production. It is important to have a checklist to make sure all pre-press requirements are met. Let's put this into practice to pre-flight our flyers. So this will be the last step of our flyer assignment. Are there any questions? Let's head back to our chat and we'll discuss.